It's time to cook with Susan Beck, and I am going to make my third soup in my series of videos on 5-part creative homemade soups. Well, today we are going to make a potato ham soup. Let's look at the things I found in my refrigerator that we're going to use. So for today's creative homemade soup, we are going to use the onions that I still have from my garden, the 1 carrot, cabbage left over from my beef and barley soup I made last week, and this rutabaga that's starting to sprout that I sure should have used sooner, but I think if we chop off the top third, we'll be good. In my freezer, I have this ham bone that we need to boil. We'll make our broth that way, but we'll supplement the seasoning of that with some ham flavoring if necessary. I have about half a cup to a cup of whipping cream left in this container and some whole milk from making yogurt. So this will be the basis of today's creative ham and potato soup. Well, today's soup really truly is creative because I have never used rutabaga in my potato soup before. So I am going to put some water into this big kettle, and I am going to cover my soup bone with the water, and I'm just going to let this boil for a bit until that ham will fall off the bone. I have about 10 cups of water to cover that, and I'm going to put it on my back smaller burner on high heat until I get it to boil, and then I'll turn it down to a simmer. You can watch a full video on how to boil a ham bone at the link I have provided below. When we get our vegetables ready while our ham bone boils, although that ham bone might take 45 minutes, even an hour, and it won't take me that long to get my vegetables ready to go. All right, I'm going to chop off the top of that, as I mentioned, and make sure that it all looks good there. I'll just get rid of a little bit. Most of it's just fine. I already peeled my carrot. Now I do the same thing with my rutabaga. It's got this waxy coating on it. I guess that just makes them last a long time, and they can be stored quite a while, although maybe not as long as I thought since my tops have sprouted. I think if I'd kept it in a cooler, drier place, that might not have happened instead of just on my countertop. But this waxy covering and the peeling just come off really nicely with my potato peeler. Okay, now the bottom end of that doesn't look real great either, so I'm going to just chop that off as well. Half of an onion's probably good enough, and I've got a little sprouting going on as well here. Remember, these came from my garden, and this is February, and my onions obviously grew in the summertime. So I like to chop an onion by removing, oops, I got a little more layer here that I don't want, by removing some of those layers I do not want, and then slicing through without breaking it completely off from that root end. And I will post a video of really good directions with close-ups on how to do this, but I slice 3 ways. Right, so there, oops, a little bit more, are my onion pieces. So I've got my onion, my rutabaga, my carrot, and now on to the cabbage. All right, I think we're just going to use maybe about 1/4 of the full cabbage, half of what I have left from making my barley soup. And we're just going to slice this up into some small pieces. I don't know, I just love cabbage in soup. I would say with my potato soup, I usually tend to use celery, but I don't even have any celery in the fridge right now. So today we're going to try it with cabbage. So this is definitely a creative soup on my part, in that this is not one that I have really ever made with this combination of vegetables before. So today I'm going to use my KitchenAid attachment. This is a shredder and a slicer attachment. I am going to use the large shredder. They do come with a more finely shredding attachment and the slicer attachment. All 3 pieces come with this white part that attaches to your mixer. And I don't know, I think it's like $35, under $40 to get those, one of the cheaper attachments that you can get, and it works so well. I did chop my own onions, I did chop my own cabbage, but I am going to go ahead and shred my carrots, and I'm going to try shredding that rutabaga today as well. And there come those carrots. I'll switch to the rutabaga now. If you've never had a rutabaga, it's very much like a potato in texture. It will cut very much the same way, but it has just this sweetness that a potato doesn't have. And I use it all the time when I am making my grandma's oven beef stew, or I often make that as an oven venison stew. I'll put that link below as well. All right, there's our shredded rutabaga, and we'll switch to the potato now. Again, like the rutabaga, I just cut it in wedges and I'm putting it in the larger feeder tube, and we're gonna shred the potatoes as well. You don't need a fancy attachment in order to do this. A plain old box grater would work just fine. These could all be served in cubes as well. You would not have to shred. Mixing it up tonight, doing some different things, using rutabaga, shredding all those vegetables. So one last little trick. I have these vegetables, not so worried about the cabbage and the onions, but potatoes and the rutabaga are gonna get brown on me, and my ham bone is still cooking away over there because it did not take me 45 minutes or an hour to chop these vegetables. So I'm just going to pour some water over those, and that will keep them just looking a little nice. It's also time to give some thought to what seasonings we want to use. I'm gonna try parsley, thyme, marjoram, pepper, and salt today. My ham bone is simmering away in here, and I have rotated it a few times just because it seems like the water starts to evaporate a bit. But when I can start to use my tongs and peel out some of that ham, it is ready to go. So I am going to move that ham over to my cutting board here, and I'm going to let it cool a bit because it's pretty hot to work with right now. So I'm just using this big meat fork here, maybe a little bit with this knife, whatever it takes to get all that ham off the bone. It's just amazing when you have a soup bone or the carcass of a chicken, how much meat you really can get. Oh, look at this. Here's a great big chunk of ham. So I don't feel like I've got a ton of ham on this bone here. So I also have in the fridge like 2 or 3 pieces of shaved deli meat. Happens to be ham, and you know, it really needs to be used up as well. So just to add to this, or maybe you just want to do your ham this way to start with. I mean, it is a lot simpler than having to boil that ham bone for 45 minutes. All right, so I've got some deli ham, I've got some regular ham. We're going to put this all into the pot with our vegetables. Our vegetables are simmering away in our broth. We're going to add in our ham. Also at this time, I'm going to add in the cream that I had left and some whole milk to make this a creamy potato soup. Oh, something else you could put into this would be some cheese and make a cheesy potato ham soup. I'm going to move it to my back burner again and let it just simmer. I don't really want it to boil. I just want it to simmer. And I need to check that my rutabaga and my potato are cooked, and then it will be ready to eat. So I'm going to give it maybe a half an hour to sit and simmer. You could hurry it along a little bit, especially since we grated our vegetables today, and that will make them cook quick. I really think we should give it a taste. So I'm going to try to just taste mostly the broth because I know my vegetables aren't cooked through yet. Much better than when I tasted it right after the ham was done, but it definitely needs a little more salt. And I'm going to get some of that salt by adding a little bit more of that ham base too, which is pretty heavy on the salt. So maybe a teaspoon more of each of those. We need to taste it again in a little bit here and see what we think. I think the soup is just gorgeous with the green cabbage and those green spices and the ham, and that rutabaga gives it a nice yellow, and those bright orange carrot. That is so good. I might always make my potato soup with rutabagas in there. It really does add a sweetness, and I love cabbage in my soup, and it's seasoned so well. But look at what we did. We just grabbed the leftover vegetables out of the fridge. We used a combination of a ham bone and some deli ham. Just went to the spice cupboard and picked out some things that might work well with potatoes, and we ended up with a terrific ham and potato soup. Be creative. See what you can invent.